Hello everyone and welcome to this session with John. He will tell you a little bit about himself in a minute. But thank you, John, very much for being involved in iMoot. Is this your first time presenting?
It's certainly my first time presenting that.
Yes. Wow. We're very much looking forward to it. And I'll just hand it straight over to you and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Wendy. Hi, everybody. Hello. In fact, with the four of you, I can say hello to each of you individually. So that's Angela, Liliana, Melanie, and Trish. Thanks for tuning in. My name is John Reddin. I'm the Director of Operations for a company called Mobile Learning. As the name implies, our focus is mobile in the learning context. As I go through my presentation, I'll give you a bit more information about what we do as it pertains to what we're doing. But particularly today, what I wanted to give you was, a very clear insight into what happens when you open up mobile channels in the learning and teaching environment. So that's essentially what I'm going to look at with you. And also the information I'm going to share with you is very much driven by data. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through. As I've said earlier to some of you, if you find I'm speaking just a little bit too quickly or anything like that, please just maybe put it up in chat and just tell me to slow down a tad. I certainly won't take offense. Okay, I shall just moving on with what we're going to do. Today, what I'll look at first and foremost is why we're even discussing mobile. I'll look at mobile, particularly in the education vertical. In that space, I'll also look at particularly what users want, give you some insights and outcomes as to what happens when mobile is rolled out, things for you to consider, and then some takeaways that I think you would find useful in terms of mobile engagement. And the first one is, does mobile matter? Why have I spent time putting this presentation together? Why have you spent the time to actually listen and want to engage with this topic? And the question, well, does mobile matter? I think maybe this particular image would give you an indication of how profoundly we have changed in relation to mobile. This is St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. It's for the announcement of the Pope, which is 2005, Pope Benedict. 2013 is Pope Francis. Same place, same cohort, and look at the difference. In between, something happened, and it was the introduction of the iPhone, which will be 10 years today. That's 2007. Since 2013, where in 2013, the split between technology engagement, digital media minutes, if you like, the split between desktop and mobile was approximately 50-50. As I said, the mobile phone, the iPhone, which was the game changer, had been introduced in 2007. So what are we looking at? 2013, 6 years. The split was 50-50, and in the intervening 3 years to June 2016, if you look at this graphic, it shifted in favor of mobile, where 2/3 of all minutes, 2 out of 3 digital media minutes were spent on mobiles and mobile apps. So that is a profound change in our behavior and the ubiquity and the reach of mobile in terms of how people access their media, their whatever it might be. Also, the other thing worth considering, and this is in relation to, yes, we have a phone, yes, we have a smartphone, and as we know, quite apart from making phone calls and texting, people are using it for many other things, not least is to access the internet. And the profound change that's happened is that from about, I think it's 2013, a similar number of people were accessing the internet through mobile devices, mobile linkages, networks, I should say, as we're connecting to the internet through fixed broadband at home. 2013 was the crossover point, and now the shift has accelerated towards mobile. And in fact, we are reaching that point where we can truly say there will be a whole generation where their notion of the internet and how they connect with the internet will be linked inextricably with the mobile. Likewise, mobile will be inextricably linked with the internet. So internet, mobile, mobile, internet. And that has an impact on how we think about how our users should access learning and teaching. So that's society at large and how they interact with mobile. What about the education vertical itself? It's the space that I and our team at Mobile Learning have been operating in. We have a range of clients in RTOs, higher education, university. We also have some corporate clients. We have a range of corporate clients, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to concentrate on our higher education clients. As you can see, we've got a range of clients there. And we do a lot of R&D with our clients to determine how mobile is being used in education. It's in part we use it to help us create better mobile experiences in the education space, but also we want to know exactly what people are doing and to really understand what people are doing. It's very much about the data we collect. And yes, we are very data driven, and we are very much about ensuring that what we say actually is pedagogically sound and driven by our analytics. We map engagement with Moodle overall, but also Moodle through desktop, Moodle through mobile at an institutional level. That's across the whole campus, if you like. Down to the course level and then down to the individual. We use a combination of tools. Moodle Logs is the heart of what we do, but also we use Google Analytics, and we use a piece of BI, business intelligence visualization software called Tableau. They're some of the tools that we use to actually crunch data to understand what people are doing. But the tools of the trade, as I said, around Moodle reporting, which I'm sure most people are familiar with. And yes, I do agree they're not the easiest tools to play with. You certainly need some advanced Excel skills to be able to pivot tables and extract data that's meaningful and useful for you. But some of the areas that we looked at that I think you'd find interesting and useful to understand is that, for example, we wanted to look at what operating systems, in other words, iOS, Android, there's also, we know there's Windows, etc. What spread across our range of clients, which, by the way, for the purposes of this and the data I was crunching, we're looking across about maybe 12 different institutions. As I said, they're RTOs, higher education, universities. They're also a mixture of face-to-face, blended, and distance education, completely online. And analysing all that data, we wanted to know what kind of operating systems people are on. I'll give you a background. If you're looking at the population in general, albeit that this statistic here, which is the United States 2015, but bear in mind the patterns of mobile behaviour there very much mirror what we are doing here in Australia and certainly in Europe, UK and places like that. So what you find is iOS, Apple is about 35% of the mobile marketplace, and Android in its various iterations is about 62%. And yes, Windows 2%, and BlackBerry, good Lord, it's 1% when you consider where it used to be. So this split is, you could say, 2/3 Android, 1/3 Apple. However, in higher education, it's actually completely flipped, which is counterintuitive, or I thought counterintuitive, in that I would have put students certainly cost sensitive. Android's a little bit cheaper, certainly data plans, the cost of the device and data plans are cheaper. But in education, and this is across the board for the range of higher education institutions I spoke about and the different types of learning, it's actually 70% Apple iOS and 30% Android. if I'm being a bit unfair, maybe I'd say it's because their parents are Apple discounts. Yes, Trish, could be, who knows? But certainly, yes, that's a flip from what we think. In other words, it's understanding too just about, you know, how loyal people are to their ecosystem. So just bear that in mind. Apple is predominantly the device and operating system of choice when it comes to education. The other thing at the heart of what we're looking at is we want to know how people are accessing Moodle with their mobile. I'm going to talk about 3 different ways, and we can circle back, and I've got extra information for those who want to know a little bit more, but I trust this will help you know, jog your interest and your exploration of Moodle and mobile and getting it out there. So the first one to look at is what I call mobile browser. It's where we take Moodle. It's got no special mobile theme applied to it. It's non-responsive. It's been built for a web browser, as you understand it, on a desktop or a laptop. Consequently, when you look at it on a mobile, you essentially open your mobile browser, Safari, Chrome, Firefox, whatever it might be. You tap in your URL for your Moodle, you log in, you probably pinch so that you can, you know, either pinch or expand so you can actually tap in your details, you log on. This is essentially what you're presented with, which, as you might imagine, because of the size of the screen, the real estate available to you, it's not exactly a wonderful experience, but nonetheless, if you have to and you want to, you can access your Moodle, even if your Moodle doesn't have a mobile-friendly theme, if it's non-responsive. Looking at situations, clients of ours who I looked at their data, so prior to their introduction of either a mobile theme or a mobile-friendly theme or a mobile app, we looked at just how much of Moodle traffic came from that mobile browser. And what we found was when you don't have a mobile theme, when it's non-responsive, the traffic was about 6% of all Moodle engagements came through the mobile browser. The rest of it was the browser was on desktop and laptop, which I think would make sense. Second one you look at is what we have seen far more of, and particularly in the last 12 months, last 12 to 24 months, is mobile-friendly themes. In other words, responsive websites. I won't go into detail about responsive HTML5, but just so you understand, it's where you design the website. So the first thing it does is it sniffs out what is the size of the screen, and then it modifies the content and presents it in a way that's optimized for the particular screen, be it a desktop, a tablet, or a phone. When people, and again, we looked at data around that, when people have mobile-friendly themes, responsive themes, then the engagement doubled and a little bit, up to about 13%. So surprise, surprise, when you make it easier, less, you know, there's less friction in the experience. When it came to mobile access to their learning materials, it doubled from the non-responsive, non-mobile friendly theme. And then finally, we looked at the data when you introduced a native app. In other words, you appify the whole Moodle experience. As you'd appreciate, if you look at this particular layout, this is native apps, or apps as we know them. They're very much about you're navigating from one screen to the next. So you take the materials as you understand Moodle, and you design them in a way that is intuitive for people to start to negotiate. So first instance, I'd press the, I'd tap the course icon. That would take me to a list of my course. I'd tap on that, it'd take me through to my particular course and its layout. Here we have a topic stroke week by week layout with a general intro, etc. And obviously a lecturer who doesn't fill out every week's section heading. But that's a native app. When we introduce a native app, this is what we found, that we had almost a quadrupling of access through mobile. So that when you remove all barriers and make it completely frictionless for people, they engage far more through their mobile device, which I suppose shouldn't come as a huge surprise, considering that as we know, that device is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in their pocket. And, you know, essentially through all this data, what I'm demonstrating is that there is a tremendous demand from students to be able to access their learning materials, their Moodle, their LMS, and more, as I'll talk about in a moment. They want to be able to access it, and the challenge for us is to make it accessible in the easiest possible way for them, that it is frictionless. I think in part what we have to understand too is that when it comes to mobile, we are used to our own apps and the apps that we use, and that's the experience that we think of and are beginning to demand of other engagement that we have on mobile. Finally, just in this area, which is what I call the quantitative analysis of mobile use, we also want to look as well, okay, if you're accessing your Moodle through mobile device, does it lead to better outcomes? And we ran a particular test with one of our clients, which was a university first year online physics course, over 1,000 students. And the lecturer ran cognitive inventory tests, in other words, on testing beforehand for knowledge of the topic, and then testing afterwards for their knowledge of the topic. And what we found for, there was the gain for app users was, because we split it into app users and non-app users, the gain for app users was 36.5%, pre-test 22.5%. For the entire cohort, it was 17. The gain was 17.4 from a pre-test score of 37. So what you heard learn was app users knew less coming in, but improved more. The improved more is obviously the figure of interest. I'll be very curious for your thoughts on app users knew less coming in. But that's certainly pointing to the fact that accessing learning materials through your mobile, certainly, and as I'll show you with some other results, leads to greater engagement, and greater engagement is certainly leading to better outcomes. So the outcomes across all our data, and as I said, across, I think in ballpark, you're looking at 3,500 students, about 10 institutions. As I said, that mixture of face-to-face, blended, and distance. One was we had universal take-up of the mobile channel. In this instance, it was a mobile app. So you build it, and yes, they do come, they do take it, they want it, there is the demand. Secondly, on average, we were looking at 6-minute session durations. In other words, the length of each engagement on average was about 6 minutes, which was comparable to the desktop. I think this is the figure that is, certainly from my point of view, I thought was very interesting, is that and I say very interesting because I've seen it. I come from a broadcasting background, film and television, and also media in general. That when digital channels, mobile channels, have been opened up in other areas, there actually is an increase in overall engagement. And the very same thing happened with Moodle and their engagement with the LMS. In other words, if there were 100 Moodle engagements prior to opening up a mobile channel, afterwards, when you combine the mobile with the desktop, laptop, you got anywhere between 25% to 45% of an increase. I suppose if we think about it, it shouldn't surprise us, just like in the media space, that when you open up access to content on mobile devices, that people will take the opportunity because they're, for various reasons, it's convenient for them to access it on a mobile. Well, a similar thing happens with Moodle. The other aspect is, depending on the type of mobile access you give people, as I said, the non-responsive side through to a responsive side through to a native app, mobile access grows from 6% to 45%. And as we saw there, we do get greater gains in cognitive inventory tests. Okay, just to run this out towards the end, that, as I said, is some of the highlights from our quantitative analysis of the data that we collected. We also ran quite a few forums, surveys, you name it, to get qualitative information back from our users, as I said, across that range of users, to know how they were engaging through the mobile channel, but also what they expected, what they want, in as much to inform the actual the app development, but also to understand what it is that they wanted from their mobile experience. And surprise, surprise, folks, top level from all of them was they wanted us to focus on them, and they felt it refreshing that in this instance, through our surveys and forums, etc., that they were. But this, I mean, it's that, look, it's just a nature of the beast that the people who have to make the decisions through admin and management about the introduction of any kind of technology invariably are people who, in this instance, when it comes to mobile, are actually not using mobile. They're sitting generally in an office at a desk using a desktop, and that they weren't necessarily the best determiners of it, that you actually have to flip it and get out there and speak to the users, who in our instances are learners, are the actual students. Or when we look at the technology from our point of view, it really isn't the software or software and hardware. It's actually what does the user do on it and what do they want. Basic principles when designing for mobiles is engagement, so that the general premise has to be that if students are offered another channel to access learning materials, that this engagement will be translated, that this extra engagement will translate into greater engagement, as we saw earlier, and better learning outcomes. It's got to be easy to use. I think this is critical, and we really do have to understand that, particularly in the mobile space, it's actually very, very unforgiving. People are so used to their apps and their app ecosystem that is the benchmark. Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, WhatsApp, whatever it is, that's the benchmark in terms of what they think about in terms of mobile experience. And people have to be able to, in fact, while as a matter of course, you produce a lot of support materials to demonstrate to people how best to use, for example, a Moodle app. In fact, they pretty much never look at it because they don't expect to have to look at it. So we have to understand that it's got to be easy to use. And the other critical thing that's needed is that it's anytime, anywhere. In other words, they can go online and offline, that they can just whip out their mobile phone in whatever circumstances, and depending on what it is they want to access, that they can do it. Give you an idea about how this translates and what it might look at. This is from all of you Moodle users, course creators, admin, LMS people. This is a typical view. This is the physics course, an online physics course. It's got a typical topic view. This is what it looks like on a browser. And this is how it's then translated into a mobile experience, into an app view, where you think about screens, where we have the first screen, the landing screen, and it gives them choices. Do they want to go to forums? Do they want to go to the calendar, the grade book? It'll still relate to their courses. So if they tap on the forums, the first thing they'll see are the various forums related to the various courses they're doing. They can make a choice on it. So in this instance, tap on courses. It takes me to that everyday physics course. That's it. It's layout. As you can see, it's easy to identify. There's no scrolling, or minimal of scrolling, and then I can tap on, for this instance, I want to get to topic 10, week 10. I do that, and then I have courses and resources. So you can see the difference in how it looks on a browser, and then how you have to think about how it looks on an app, on a mobile experience, because that's what they expect. That is what they want. I say they, I mean the end user, invariably a student in our instance. That's what we have to think about. The other thing that's worth pointing out, that all our research, in particular focus group work and surveys demonstrated, is that the heart of what we're doing here is taking a difficult, maybe it's a bit of a misnomer, but taking a complicated LMS like Moodle and appifying that experience, getting it onto a mobile. But the students' ecosystem, as it relates to their learning, as it relates to their institution, their college, whatever it is, actually goes beyond the LMS. And what they want is all of those related student support things, whether it's the library, whether it's booking a room, whether it's campus news, whether it's emergency numbers for support, whatever it is, guidelines, they expect them to be in the app. They don't want to have a Moodle app, which they close, and then they have to go and either go to the browser to access other college institution information. For them, it's important that their learning is put together in one place, which presents its own challenge because that's a lot of information to get into one place. And how do we do it in a way that actually is seamless? But these are the challenges that we have to think about. So in a nutshell, when it comes to users, students, what do they want? They, first and foremost, as I've said, they definitely want mobile access, and they want it in a way that's meaningful, useful to them. Single sign-on, in other words, their Moodle sign-on. They want to sign on once and never have to sign on again, unless, of course, they've signed out, which is on. They want, as I mentioned, all the resources in one place. They also want, they don't mind the occasional prodding, notifications, but essentially it's around when assignments are due, when exams are due, etc. Yes, when it comes to alerts, it's very much about their self-interest. They want to have offline access. They're data sensitive, and they want to know that if there's a particular resource they access, that they download it once, it's on their phone, and they don't need internet access after that. They're also really comfortable using, because don't forget that mobile phone is an amazing piece of technology that has remarkable camera, video, audio capabilities. They're very comfortable using those, and to think about integrating them. When I say personalized, I've got personalized learning and planning. Think about it, that's the single sign-on. The only thing they see is what's pertinent and relevant to them, what they're logged into. And then they want that seamless integration with their app ecosystem. Okay, so with mobile, just to start to wrap this up for you folks, and I do appreciate your patience. But some of the things to keep in mind, at a minimum, look, I think we're agreed mobile is a necessity. Students want it, they expect it, and increasingly I think you'll find that they demand it. So at a minimum, we have to give them a responsive mobile-friendly theme so that their engagement with Moodle on mobile is a lot better. When it comes to laying out your courses, certainly, as you saw earlier, the topic course layout, that week by week, certainly is optimal. Use large fonts. Image sizes, keep them to a minimum. Think about it. If you have huge image sizes, which on a browser on a desktop might be a big issue for you, it's a problem on mobile. The real estate is small. Standards are MP3 for audio, MP4 for video. No flash, no flash, no flash. It's MP4 for video. Some of the specs there. When it comes to their mobile, what they rate very, very highly, users is just their ease of accessing the learning resources. The fact they can get a PDF, audio files, video files, the fact they can access them online. They just love that. And particularly around forum activities, that tends to be a big area, because if we think about it, with forums, they're used to it in relation to chat, etc. And then in terms of designing your courses, as you move further on, leverage the device capabilities in your course design. Don't forget there's a camera there, a microphone, you can create images, video and audio, in other words, exercises built around that. And when it comes to mobile solutions, your mobile solution, look, it has to be deeply integrated into the LMS, into Moodle. It can't stand alone and just pluck out one or two things. It's actually got to work very deeply with Moodle, because that allows you to then dynamically modify content. In other words, modify content once inside Moodle and know that it's deployed across all screens, all channels, and allows personalized learning experiences for people. The other thing I'll say briefly, you saw me talk about the analytics, which is very much at the heart of everything we do. It's built into our DNA. You know, we're all about measuring things, because if we can measure things, we can manage things. And I think that's, you know, if you're not measuring it, you're not going to manage it. So I just think it's important that you build a learning analytics capability, be it a surface level or not, so that you can track user engagement. You need to know what people are doing. But from that, the learning analytics, that as well as collecting data, that you can actually start to use it in a meaningful way. That's best through visualization. This really does help with planning and implementing intervention strategies. In other words, identifying student at risks, etc. And then being able to communicate effectively to individuals or groups. This is kind of a classic mobile platform where admin teaching inputting into a Moodle LMS, which is then integrated into a cloud infrastructure, because that allows the push notifications, the analytics tracking, etc., which then pushes in and out to the app where you can do things. Final takeaways, final takeaways, just to say to you, with regard to your institution, your business, whatever it is, that when it comes to embracing mobile solutions, you have to own it. You need to be out and proud. You need to shout about it. Our experience has shown that if the institution doesn't get out there and own it, and this is around branding, it's around communication, it's about letting students know what's going on. If you don't place, or they perceive you're not placing any value in it, they will consequently take that perception as well and not value it. The flip side of that is if you embrace it and shout it from the the hilltops, then yeah, do you know what? They very much will embrace it. Secondly, you really have to start to think about the end user, and by that I mean it's through communications. You really do have to embrace the end user, the students, to know what it is they want. You have to open up communication channels with them, and you have to cop what they have to say. And once you start it, you can't stop it. But it's part and parcel of everything we do, and I just think it's just really important. So, and finally, as I've said already, you have got to find analytic solutions. You have to be able to measure what it is you're doing to know how to do it better. Okay, thank you. I note that I've got a couple of questions there. I've got one from Jill. Maybe this is what I'll do, is answer that, unless people want to jump on and throw other things at me. Yeah, Jill, you mentioned about the Moodle mobile app. Yes, thanks, Wendy. I'll answer Jill's question. The mobile app, that is about it integrated into your Moodle LMS. So that's where your Moodle hoster, Jill, whoever it is looks after your Moodle, would need to configure it so that it will work with Moodle Mobile. Moodle Mobile is good, but as Moodle has suggested, if you want to use the Moodle Mobile app, it's a responsive hybrid app. They suggest you get in contact with a Moodle partner who will brand it for you, configure it for you, etc., because it doesn't come out of the box branded, etc. So either go Moodle Mobile or a native app supplier, someone like obviously it's the company I work for, Mobile Learning. That's what we do. Dot, you had a question, conditional restricting. That's okay, Jill. Look, don't hesitate to follow up with me. I can give you information on both sides for you, Moodle Mobile and also native apps, because they pretty much arrive at the same solutions. So, sorry, Dot, you've asked a question. Courses heavily use conditional restricting access. Dot, the way it works is, and this is the beauty of using native apps, is that everything is managed through the Moodle LMS. In other words, through its restrictions that it places around, conditional restrictions that it puts around. So, Dot, it's one of those useful things that you're right around the browser. I think if it was browser responsive or not, I think that would be not a fabulous experience. In fact, it'd be more restrictive. Whereas if you use something like a native app, because of the login, single login, all of those conditional restrictions would translate quite well. And in fact, for the user, wouldn't even know about it. Yeah. It's okay, Dot. Any other questions? Oh, thanks, Trace. Much appreciated. And listen, folks, just for those of you out there, if you do want to know any more about this space, and particularly around responsive HTML5, native, etc. I have a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm just willing to share. In fact, I'll probably tack it on to the end of this presentation so that when people go to access them down the line, they can actually get more information on it. And also more information just about the granular learning analytics and things to think about when it comes to analytics. But please, folks, I do encourage you to get in touch if you want to know any more and more information around learning analytics and mobile access.
John, I'm just going to jump in here and say thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. Really easily, we followed it very easily, and it was very clarifying, and we understood your voice completely. It was absolutely fabulous. And we just, yes, for those who are interested to continue the conversation, don't forget you can go onto the forums of each session, and we can keep having a chat there. If you think that somebody else may be interested in watching this, or you would like to watch it again, John will be presenting this again, but you can also watch the replay of each session as well for anyone who may have missed it and you thought, oh, I'd love this. Thank you so much, John. It was very interesting. Cheers.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.